we are now basically on to chapter 4 of Srimad Bhagavatam's first canto. And we are going to revisit an extraordinarily important topic. We're going to revisit the topic of satisfaction. We're going to revisit the topic of happiness. And what we just wanted to start again with was the fact that happiness and satisfaction, which comes through coming in touch with transcendence, is very different from the satisfaction that can come through accomplishing things in this world. So, in other words, what we're trying to say is that if we are engaging in devotional service, many of us here have been involved in devotional service for many, many years. And after being involved in devotional service for many, many years, we are also experiencing some level of, I would say, disturbance in our emotions, in our minds, in the sense that sometimes we could be in a situation where we are distinctly unhappy. There cannot be a circumstance, if devotional service is done properly, there cannot be a circumstance where a devotee is unhappy. So we need to reflect very carefully. If you're engaging in devotional service and yet you feel unhappy about your life and you feel distinctly down and despondent, then you need to re-examine how and what are the causes for this issue. And the reason we're saying this is because the cause for a devotee to be unhappy, someone who is practicing devotional service, a cause for the devotee to be unhappy is because they haven't understood the goals of devotional service. We literally haven't understood the goals of devotional service because we are engaging in the practice of devotional service, but our motivations for devotional service are distinctly material. So please underline this. We are engaging in devotional service, but our motivation is distinctly material. The extent to which the objectives we have in engaging in devotional service are situated within the sphere of material existence, to that extent, we will be unhappy as well. It may not yield results. The extent to which we have objectives which are distinctly material, we will have problems in being able to fully progress with devotional service. We would not be able to experience what is required. So we need to re-examine the objectives. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in 7.16, Chaturvida bhajante mam. So he talks about the fact that 4 types of men, 4 types of entities, living beings, human beings, they approach him. And he says all of them are quite magnanimous because they're approaching me. And he classifies them as those who are desiring relief from distress. Someone is distressed and they are wanting relief from distress and they are approaching Krishna. Someone is distinctly a desirer of wealth and they are approaching Krishna. And then someone is basically in a situation of wanting to be freed from this particular existence in certain ways, and they approach Krishna. Then there's also those who are inquisitive who approach Krishna. So the point which we're trying to make is Chaturvida bhajante mam 7.16 distinctly talks about the consciousness of approaching Krishna with an objective which is very much connected to this world. It's fruitive. Now, when we approach Krishna with fruitive desires, we fall in the category of 7.16. It's quite preliminary. And when we approach Krishna in devotional service with the objective of wanting to gain in material life or having objectives which are still very much material, then it's quite miserable. Because in many cases amongst devotees, because they give up they give up the practice of sense gratifications, which is so wonderful, They've given up sense gratification. They're not engaging in any kind of sense gratification because they're advised against it. They're following regulative principles. And they come into devotional service. They take up sadhana bhakti. And as they make progress, they find that they're very dissatisfied. And sometimes you find they're distinctly unhappy, which is very, very tragic, because Krishna is Sachidananda Vigraha. He is filled with transcendental bliss. We as spirit souls are composed of knowledge, eternity, and bliss. So when our quality is blissful and Krishna's quality is blissful, when we come in touch with Krishna, how could we be miserable? How could a devotee be miserable? The answer to this is that the objective of devotional service has to be examined in the devotee's heart. What are you asking Krishna for? What is it which is being addressed there? Where are your objectives? Are you setting objectives within the sphere of material energy? Are you setting objectives beyond? Because you have given up sense gratification, you're following regulative principles. In many cases, this is suppression. It means that you haven't lost taste for sense gratification. You're suppressing your desires, and at the same time, you're engaging in sadhana to elevate your consciousness so that those desires become minimized because you're experiencing a higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. You are experiencing something higher by giving up something lower. So that is the principle that we follow in our process. Now, when we are following such a principle and we are engaging in devotional service, why is it that we are miserable? Why is it that we have a miserable devotee? Because there are devotees who are quite miserable, and we sometimes find ourselves in that condition as well. It's because we have desires that are distinctly connected to this world, which are not being fulfilled. What we are doing is we have desires that are connected to this world, and we are practicing devotional service, and sometimes we assign the objective of devotional service as fulfillment of those desires. And as a consequence, when those desires are not fulfilled, sense gratification has stopped because you're following regulative principles. There is no satisfaction in spiritual life because those objectives of spiritual life are also distinctly material. Now the soul is stuck in between. And as a consequence, there's despondence, there's grief. Coming in touch with material energy is a cause for grief. There's nothing but grief. Dukkhalayam, asashvatam. This whole creation of material energy where there's constant destruction. There's constant destruction. Look at Lord Brahma's life. He starts creating during the day, and part of what he has created is being destroyed during his sleep. Right? Our bodies are getting destroyed as we speak, as we lie down in the night and we wake up. During the period of sleep, there's a lot of destruction that goes on within our bodies as well. The point which we're trying to make is we can't be happy in a home which is still under construction. The material world is basically a home which is always under construction. It is always being broken apart. It is always being destroyed. Some aspect of our existence is always being destroyed at some level. So when we start identifying with this home fully and expect that the destruction that is occurring should stop, it can't be, because that's nature. And when we have objectives in this world and we start pursuing devotional service whilst carrying all those objectives in our heart, over a period of time, we start blaming Krishna because our desires are not being fulfilled. And when we start blaming Krishna for all our desires which are not being fulfilled, we also feel miserable because in one sense, we can't go back to sense gratification. That taste is lost. In one sense, we can't move forward because we are stuck with all our issues in life in certain ways, which in many ways are due to the fact that we are desiring things which are not connected to Krishna consciousness. So this is a position where a devotee becomes miserable, because you can't be completely happy pursuing a transcendental process where the objective is transcendental. The nature of the person performing the activity is transcendental. In other words, that is the scope of the spirit soul. It is being overwhelmed by connection to this world. And as time progresses, we feel quite miserable because we're not really being able to move forward. This is the 10th offense in the chanting of the holy names. This is the 10th offense. What is the 10th offense? Having material desires, material objectives, even after receiving so many instructions on this particular topic. This is the 10th offense. Why does the 10th offense occur? The 10th offense occurs because the first offense has occurred. There are 10 offenses. The 10th offense in chanting is occurring because the first offense is occurring. So when you have material objectives and all kinds of desires to be fulfilled, and we're expecting those desires to be fulfilled whilst engaging in pure devotional service, where the pure devotional service has a completely different objective. It is supposed to take us to the transcendental platform while taking care of our needs in a very apt and suitable manner. Everything would be taken care of if one is chanting the holy names. Everything would be arranged by the divine couple. Everything would be satisfied to the extent to which it is required for the objective of reaching Goloka. Transcendental devotional service is so powerful that the objectives are going to drive your life from now on. Whom you're associating with, who is surrounding you, what kind of a lifestyle you have, and what kind of activity that you do during the day, all of this gets changed when you come in touch with Harinam. Everything changes because the objective is to be able to chant the pure name. So when we're chanting the pure name and we're calling upon Harinam, if we're feeling miserable, it means that there have been offenses, and those offenses are causing material desires to appear in the heart. Because there are material desires, you're in touch with material energy, there can be no satisfaction whatsoever. So in one sense, the senses are not engaged and there is no transcendental position. One experiences despondence, one feels quite down. So the point we are trying to make is that coming in touch with material energy and being in touch with material energy and desiring things within this world, after being given the extraordinary gift of Harinam, is the cause of misery. It is very important for devotees to take inventory of your hearts. Take inventory of your hearts. Write down what is going on in the first half of the day. Write down what is predominating your consciousness on a daily basis. Keep a diary. Write down your realizations after Bhagavatam class. Write down your realizations after japa. When you write down and you observe that there is a certain pattern of thoughts which keep coming to you, where your mind is constantly distracted by a single issue, try seeing if there is a better way to do that. See if something is bothering you to such an extent. Seek counseling to see how you could handle it so that you could be able to displace it. See how you could accept the circumstance. The simplest circumstance in devotional service, the simplest technique given by the Bhagavad Gita, this is very confidential and it is extraordinarily powerful. The simplest technique that's being given in the Bhagavad Gita is for us to accept the circumstances of life. Accept the circumstances of life. Accept it as Krishna's arrangement. This is not Krishna's arrangement. This is not Krishna's arrangement at all. It is our karmic reaction. Even though these are our karmic reaction and this is not Krishna's arrangement at all, accepting life as Krishna's arrangement would make it Krishna's arrangement. Accepting life as Krishna's arrangement would make it Krishna's arrangement. We would have help. This is very important for us to reflect. This is the easiest way to remove obstacles. You want to remove obstacles in devotional service? Reflect on life and accept each day as being arranged by Krishna. Accept the circumstances of life as being arranged by Krishna to bring you closer. When you start accepting, it becomes Krishna's arrangement. Everything around you would start moving to assist you to come closer to Krishna. This is the way to remove obstacles. There's a need for reflection. There's a need for inventory taking. Devotional service can't be performed blindly. There's a need for observation of where things are. Where is it that we are being held back? What is the predominant thought process that is dominating us all the time? Are we constantly being bothered by something? In which case you would need to pay attention. You would need to pay attention to it to see what you could do within your capacity to alter the circumstances. You also need to seek help. If you know someone who can counsel you, some senior Vaishnav, because they would have seen such circumstances, they would have resolved it. Seek help, which is very important. And third, most important, reflect on the fact that the arrangement of your life is simply an arrangement by Krishna himself. The moment you accept life as Krishna's arrangement, it will become Krishna's arrangement. This is a very, very powerful transcendental technique. It becomes Krishna's arrangement. It is almost a very natural way to transform. If you accept your life as Krishna's arrangement, it becomes Krishna's arrangement. This is very important for you to understand. Now, why am I bringing this up in today's topic? Today's topic was the 4th chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why am I addressing how we feel? Why am I addressing the thought process of devotees? Why am I talking about the fact that the whole concept of a miserable devotee is an oxymoron? How can you be a devotee and miserable? How can we be in touch with transcendental bliss and be miserable in life? This requires a lot of reflection. And I'm bringing this up with the 4th chapter of the 1st canto, because in the 4th chapter of the 1st canto, Srila Vyasadeva, who is an incarnation of the Lord, was miserable. He was despondent. He had accomplished compiling of the Vedas. He had accomplished the composition of the Mahabharata so that it is in a story form and it is easy for those who are not inclined intellectually to be able to think on topics which are very critical and be able to move forward and understand their place in life. He had composed poems, he had written the Puranas, he had done all of what he had to do as the source of transcendence, because he was the literary incarnation of the literary incarnation of the Lord. He was the literary incarnation of the Lord. Now, the literary incarnation of the Lord, Srila Vyasadeva, is being depicted as being despondent in the 4th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam's 1st canto. How could an incarnation of the Lord feel sad? Isn't he supposed to be in transcendental bliss? Isn't he supposed to be fully situated in bliss? How could he be sad? It's a big clue for us right at the onset. What was it which was making Srila Vyasadeva despondent, dissatisfied after compiling the Vedas, after he had done everything he had to do? This is an incarnation of the Lord. How could he feel less situated? How could he feel less motivated? The reason given by Śrī Nārada Muni, his guru, is that you basically simply focused on the 4 pillars of material existence. You focused on dharma in your writings. You focused on how to achieve and how to stay, and what is dharma and what is a dharma. You focused on dharma. Duty. When one performs dharma adequately, carefully, understanding their position in society, being very careful about performing their duties, then one gains wealth in the subtle level. Yeah, you develop wealth. These are pious reactions. This is subtle wealth. When one is very dharmic, you develop and you earn subtle wealth. And the subtle wealth is artha. So dharma leads to subtle wealth, which is artha. Srila Vyasadeva had written about all kinds of Vedic sacrifices where one could perform dharma within the prescription of the Vedas and accumulate subtle wealth, which is artha. And using the subtle wealth, one has the ability to fulfill the desires, which is kama. If we don't have our desires fulfilled in life, it means that we are lacking subtle wealth. We do not have sufficient piety to be able to achieve our desires. It is like having currency in your pocket. Without currency, you can't buy things. Without currency in the subtle level, you can't manifest your desires. If people are miserable in today's world, is because they don't have any piety. They are not dharmic. Most cases, they are the opposite. And as a consequence, they don't have any ability or power to fulfill their desires. They are plagued with problems because they don't have the ability to solve their problems. If you want to solve problems, one needs to be righteous. By being righteous, dharmic, performing rituals and so on according to the Veda, even going exactly and doing your duty as you're supposed to do with great care, one accumulates pious reactions. Those pious reactions are artha. Those pious reactions have the ability to purchase and fulfill our desires. So in many cases, if people are miserable, it is because they have no piety. They have nothing to purchase. They have nothing in their bank accounts, the subtle bank accounts. They have nothing for them to be able to fulfill and manifest their desires. Their desires remain broken. Their desires remain unfulfilled. They become miserable. Yeah. So Srila Vyasadeva had written about dharma. He had written about the accumulation of wealth, which is artha. When we talk about wealth in the Vedas, we literally are talking about subtle wealth. And subtle wealth means that you have enough piety for you to desire something and to obtain something, which is why people went on years and years and years of tapasya so that they could elevate themselves to higher planets, because they're desiring a destination in the higher planets. And by doing tapasya, they are engaging in accumulating pious wealth. And then by desiring the future, they are practically going from one destination to the other to a better future. This is the process of engaging in activity, dharma, accumulating artha, and then fulfilling kama, which is desires. These are the topics of the Vedas. Then there's a compilation of the Vedanta, which practically is the ending conclusion. Once the whole process of accumulating piety, fulfilling our desires, fulfilling everything is over, one still feels miserable. And then they realize that this whole process is frustrating. They realize that there really isn't any meaning to this. Then they go on and pursue moksha, wanting to be liberated from this world. So these are the 4 pillars of Purusharthas which are spoken about in the Vedas. So Śrī Nārada Muni is telling Vyasadeva that you are despondent, you are sad because you're in touch with material energy. What have you taught these people through the Vedas? What ideas and what knowledge has been given to all of these souls through the Vedas? They have simply been taught to pursue a path of sense gratification where they could engage in sacrifice, obtain piety, fulfill their desires, and then they have to wait for millenniums, take different bodies, go to different lokas, go from one planet to the other in the material sphere, and then finally, out of frustration, give up and then pursue moksha. This is the topic of the Vedas. Vedanta includes this as well, because Vedanta talks about ending life. Vedanta talks about moving forward and being liberated from material existence. What does Srila Rupa Goswami say about pure devotional service? He says, Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, Anukuliyana Krishna Anushilanam, Bhakti Uttama. Uttama Bhakti can't be tainted, can't be maligned, can't be Uttama Bhakti if the objectives are either to achieve things in this world or in the material sphere, or if the objectives themselves are to give up and move forward and to be free of suffering. Jnana and Jnanis are much better than karmis. The karmis want to enjoy in this world. The Jnanis want to leave the world. So at least their objective is above the material sky. So Jnanis are much better. Krishna says in 7.16 that these are categories of men who approach me. They are all very magnanimous because at the very least they have chosen to come to me. So the point we are trying to make is, if Srila Vyasadeva the literary incarnation of the Lord, if he can become miserable and despondent after accomplishing all of this, it is because the whole output was within the spheres of material energy and leaving it so that the suffering could end. He was focused on the four Purusharthas. He was focused on the Purushartha of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. This would make anyone despondent because the objectives are within the material sphere. It would make anyone miserable. Srila Vyasadeva was miserable. Śrī Nārada Muni points this out to him. You are miserable, you're despondent, because your entire life's accomplishment has simply been, the scope of this entire accomplishment has been within this material realm. It's either achieving higher planetary systems within the realm, higher grade of enjoyment, or it is leaving this material realm and becoming liberated, which is in one sense, it is, I'm tired of all of this and I want to go. I like all of this and I want to stay here, or I'm tired of all of this and I just want to go. Srila Vyasadeva was despondent because the scope of his work, his literary accomplishment, and this is an incarnation of the Lord, simply dealt with the subject matters of either being in this world or leaving this world. He was despondent. If Srila Vyasadeva could be miserable, he could be despondent. What about us? What about us? What is our accomplishment in this world? What is it that we have offered to humanity for us to be satisfied? Have we fulfilled the purpose of life? What is it which we even feel satisfied about on a day-to-day basis? Most of us have nothing. We just exist to go from one day to the other so that we could eat, sleep, mate, and defend in certain ways. And this makes us miserable because our objectives are within the scope of this particular realm. Our objectives, even while being in devotional service, are very much within the realm of material energy. If Srila Vyasadeva could be dissatisfied, that's a clue being given in Srimad Bhagavatam right at the outset, that even if it's a literary incarnation, he could become despondent with all the work that he did. But if all that work simply meant moving from one station of material life to another, it's going to make that person miserable. They're not going to be satisfied with the output. So Srila Nārada Muni wanted to correct him. He said, what is missing is that you did not adequately describe the transcendental nature and activities of the Supreme Lord. You did not adequately describe. There is description in the Puranas, there is description in the Mahabharata, there is description in the Vedas. But it is tainted by the objective of wanting to improve our material situation. The objective is not pure. You will notice in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the Lord appears in different forms, and you will notice, if you read very carefully, that the objective makes the Lord appear in certain forms. Yeah? There is one particular section in the 6th canto, if I remember, where there are prayers being offered, and this is being done by a Prajapati who wants to beget progeny because he feels dissatisfied that he is a Prajapati. His business is to populate the world and he hasn't done a good job and he wants help. So he is basically engaging in penance, and as a consequence, the Lord appears in a 10-armed form so that he can remove all the obstacles in the 10 different directions of the material sphere. Yeah, 10 arms, 10 different directions, weapons in each arm, so that he could remove the obstacles for this devotee. And once those obstacles are removed, what is the relationship which the devotee has with the Lord? Zero. Because the objective of material achievement has been bigger than the relationship with the Lord. If our karma and our karmic objectives and the objectives that we set in life, and then we start using the Lord to achieve those objectives are bigger than the Lord. Can this lead to satisfaction? The answer is no. Now, this is one clue for a miserable devotee. A miserable devotee is someone who hasn't understood the goals of devotional service. They are magnanimous, they are wonderful, they are most worshipable, because they've come to devotional service. However, if they're unhappy with life after coming to devotional service, it is because their objectives are to use Krishna and use the process of devotional service to attain something. And if those objectives are not attained, they become miserable. Srila Vyasadeva, being in touch with material energy and making arrangements for us of attaining dharma, artha, moksha, kama, the literature and the support and all these things which he provided, he basically was despondent because this is all within the scope of the material energy. It's either that or leaving material energy. He was despondent. Śrī Nārada Muni had to come and then tell him, you are missing something. You're missing rasa. You are missing rasa. You are a soul. You are supposed to taste the rasa of relationship between you and the Supreme Lord. Without that rasa, there is no satisfaction in life. You cannot be satisfied. Keep one objective. Please keep one objective for performing devotional service. The singular objective of life should be to be able to develop a relationship with Krishna. And when you keep that objective and you're very eager to develop a relationship with Krishna, all kinds of obstacles would be removed. So the technique that has been given to us by Mahaprabhu is you basically engage in devotional service and you accept life as an arrangement of Krishna. Wake up in the morning and say, you have arranged the life that I'm supposed to experience today. You have arranged it. This is your special benediction. Because you have arranged it, I'm going to accept it in that manner. I'm going to execute life today to the fullest degree possible. Because you have arranged it, I'll do my very best. I'll do my very best. So I'll do what is required. If there are challenges, I will do what is required to face those challenges. I will try my best to make improvements so that I can be better situated to chant better, to associate better, to serve better. What would happen if we were to accept the arrangement of today as Krishna's arrangement? It would become Krishna's arrangement. Please reflect before you start chanting. Please reflect after the fact as to what your objectives are. Your objectives are simply to develop a relationship with Krishna by engaging in service, by engaging in calling upon the holy names. So the means and the end are the same. You're going to be calling upon the holy names. The holy names will become fully manifest in our heart. When will the holy names be fully manifest in our heart? The holy names would become fully manifest in our heart when we want nothing but the chanting of the holy names in our life. Why should the holy names appear in our heart when we have so many different things going on? So keeping these desires, making a note of what we are wanting, what is it which is the whole objective of devotional service, constantly monitoring to see if our desires predominated by us. We get predominated by certain desires. We get overwhelmed by certain desires. It is either getting overwhelmed by certain desires or the lack of fulfillment in those. Keep and watch and see if they're connected to devotional service. If they're not connected to devotional service, please understand that being miserable is exactly the condition that would come. It's exactly the condition that would come because we are in touch with material energy. Being in touch with material energy is a sure shot source of misery. Don't keep objectives within this planet, within this world. Do not keep objectives. They're not related to devotional service. Reevaluate them because they will become sources of misery. We may not have enough piety to make that arrangement, or when the arrangement comes, it may even interfere with devotional service. It is better for us to constantly desire Panchanga Bhakti. So if Srila Vyasadeva could be despondent by being in touch with devotional, the activities of fruitive nature, he composed Vedas, which is full of different ways to achieve things. He becomes very dissatisfied. That is the topic of the 4th chapter. He becomes very dissatisfied and he is basically waiting for clarification and reflecting when Śrī Nārada Muni appears. Śrī Nārada Muni, he is an incarnation of the Lord as well. And as he's an incarnation of the Lord, he specifically carries the potency of devotional service. Whenever there's sincerity, Śrī Nārada Muni appears. In the case of Dhruva Maharaj, Śrī Nārada Muni appeared. In the case of Prahlad Maharaj, he was a spiritual master. Yeah. In the case of Srila Vyasadeva, he was the spiritual master of Srila Vyasadeva. In the case of encouraging sage Valmiki to write the Ramayana, it was Śrī Nārada Muni who encouraged him. Wherever there's devotional service which has to be performed, Śrī Nārada Muni appears to remove the obstacles as the Guru. So Śrī Nārada Muni appeared so wonderfully. Yeah, we can always offer personal prayers in our heart to Śrī Nārada Muni. We can offer prayers to our Guru Maharaj because our Guru comes in the lineage of Śrī Nārada Muni. We can also offer personal prayers to Śrī Nārada Muni from the heart to help us move forward so that we could offer our very best to Krishna. He appears and he instructs him. He says, you are despondent, you are miserable, you are basically facing challenges because you have only made arrangements within this world. Yeah? And people will think this is the purpose of religion. People will think this is the purpose of religion. They will think that this is the whole purpose of religion. In reality, the whole purpose of religion is for us to develop a relationship with Krishna. Rasa is missing. The relationship is missing. Srila Vyasadeva, you now need to glorify the Lord so that people can develop a relationship with Him. That is true satisfaction. They are misled. They are thinking achieving their objectives is the goal of life. They are misled with all this Vedic literature that you have compiled. Therefore, please, please write and compile something which would give them the ability to develop a relationship with the Lord. That is Srimad Bhagavatam. Hearing Srimad Bhagavatam on a daily basis is being given as the only solution for Kali Yuga. If you hear Srimad Bhagavatam, then Srimad Bhagavatam has the ability to display all kinds of misconceptions and allow us to move forward. Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing on a daily basis, would set goals for us. It would allow us to move forward because we would have transcendental goals. We are miserable in devotional service. If you are miserable, it's because there are no proper goals. Our goals are very much within the sphere of material energy. Examine it very carefully. We are either waiting for some problem to be solved, thinking Krishna should solve it, or we are waiting for something to happen in our lives, thinking Krishna should provide. When this happens, there's misery because it may or may not happen. You see? If this issue of being in touch with material energy can make Srila Vyasadeva despondent, what to say of us? What to say of us? Our position is extraordinarily, extraordinarily dangerous. And it is quite, I would say, fragile. It's quite fragile because we don't have the ability to do anything in any capacity. We don't have the ability to overcome material energy. An incarnation of the Lord felt despondent. His Guru, our Guru, Śrī Nārada Muni, is instructing Vyasadeva. Offer rasa. Let the essence of relationships flow in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Bring the relationship of the Lord into the forefront. Bring the relationship of the Lord into the forefront and present it as the sole objective of humanity. This is the essence of the Vedas. This is the essence of all that exists. If you do this, you will be satisfied. This is the statement made by Srila Nārada Muni. You will be satisfied, Vyasadeva. This is, Srimad Bhagavatam is the source of satisfaction to Srila Vyasadeva. Being in touch with material energy is the source of dissatisfaction to an incarnation of the Lord. This should give us a lot of motivation, and it should also be cautionary. We need to examine ourselves. We need to see where we are. Because logically, it's an oxymoron, as we would call it. In a misery and devotional service, this is an oxymoron. Two things can't, these are very big contradictions. They can't coexist. You can't coexist. Misery and pure devotional service can't coexist. If you're miserable, there's something wrong with pure devotional service, the other part. Pay attention. Pay attention because the objectives have been lost. And objectives get lost because we are in the material world. we are stimulated by the environment of the material world, and we set objectives based on the stimulus that is received in the environment. You go to work and your boss and your co-workers will set objectives for you that you have to be promoted, and that's what is going to make you happy. Now you have a problem, because now you have an objective which is completely disconnected from Panchanga Bhakti. You have an objective which is completely disconnected from rasa of being able to develop a relationship with Krishna, and you're going to strive for it, and you're going to be working very hard towards an objective which is not connected at all. There's a stimulus from an environment. So therefore, stimulus from devotees is absolutely necessary. There's a reason why Sadhu Sangha is so important, because when we come in touch with Sadhu Sangha, we get stimulated to have objectives which are transcendental. Then that transcendental objective allows us to elevate ourselves, allows us to move forward. So please examine your objectives on a daily basis. Take inventory, write down reflections. This is hard work. It's required because the objective is so lofty and so wonderful that this hard work will be completely worth it. This hard work of introspection on a daily basis and note-taking and reflection is absolutely necessary on this path. This is a clue. Srila Vyasadeva, sitting on the banks of Saraswati, reflecting on his lifetime's achievement of compiling the Vedas, putting together the Vedanta Sutras, putting together the Vedanta, the verses of basically the Vedanta, the conclusion, the philosophical conclusions of all the Vedas, which is called the end of the Vedas, putting together all of these. If someone is reflecting and feeling dissatisfied, it's because they're in touch with material energy. Someone of such a lofty achievement is feeling dissatisfied. It's a clue for us. It is a clue that tells us that the extent to which we are in touch with wanting to achieve things in this world, to that extent we will also be miserable. The extent to which the objectives that we have are disconnected from Krishna consciousness, to that extent we will be miserable. There is no guarantee that those objectives are going to be granted. Misery is guaranteed. That's for sure. Because we are in touch with the material world, regardless of how it is, regardless of how wonderful it is, misery is guaranteed. So this is a very, very big clue in this particular chapter. And then a comparison is being made between Srila Vyasadeva and Srila Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami is the son of Srila Vyasadeva. And there's a beautiful comparison which is being given. The comparison which is being given it's through an example. Sukadev Goswami is not wearing any clothes. Yeah, Digambar. The 10 different directions are covering him. So he's not wearing any clothes. You know, the sky is covering him, as we would call it. He is walking alongside his father, in front of his father. Srila Vyasadeva is fully clothed. As they pass by a stream, they pass by a body of water, a few women who are bathing cover themselves when Srila Vyasadeva approaches. But they were not bothered when Sukadev Goswami passed by. He was 16 years old. He wasn't a child. He was 16 years old. He was youthful. But they were not concerned when he passed by. They did not feel that they had to cover themselves. When Srila Vyasadeva passed by, they covered themselves even though he was fully clothed. Srila Vyasadeva pauses and he asks this question saying, why is it? What is it which you're doing? Why is it that you covered yourself when I passed by? It is because they said, you are aware of the duality of material existence. Srila Vyasadeva, being a grahastha, could distinguish a male from a female. Sukadev Goswami was liberated. He was beyond the material sky. He was a Brahmavadi. He never saw any distinction between anybody. So when he passed by, the women did not feel compelled to cover themselves. When Srila Vyasadeva passed by, they felt compelled to cover themselves because he can distinguish. So the ability to distinguish happens in Grahasthashram, where one distinguishes who is a male and who is a female, because it is a natural outcome of being in the Grahasthashram. And those women mentioned that you would discriminate and he wouldn't discriminate. He is above the material sky, but you are not so much that Srila Vyasadeva wasn't a transcendental personality. He was an incarnation of the Lord. He was empowered to produce transcendental literature. But it is simply a matter of distinguishing. So the point we want to make here is the characters in Srimad Bhagavatam who are coming forth from the early stages of Srimad Bhagavatam are Sukadeva Goswami, Srila Vyasadeva's son, who was already liberated. He was a Brahmavadi. He was very attracted to the conception of Krishna's impersonal form. He was pursuing it. He was not committing offenses. He was not saying that basically Krishna's personal form doesn't exist. He was not saying that Leela is false. He was simply attracted to the impersonal feature of Brahman. He was a Brahmavadi. He had pursued the Brahmavadi designation. He had achieved it. He was his 2 feet, even though apparently on earth, were not on earth, they were above the material sphere. They were already above the material sphere. He had already gone above. So he had pursued it. Such a liberated personality, when he hears Krishna Katha, he becomes extraordinarily motivated. Why is it so? It is so because in Krishna Katha, there's rasa. There is the concept of relationships. Everyone is eager for relationships. And Sukadeva Goswami, when he heard about Krishna Katha, he became extraordinarily motivated. And he became extraordinarily, I would say, blissful and wanted to get absorbed. And he became a personalist. He became a great devotee of the Lord. In other words, he started exhibiting features of pure devotional service after hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, even though he was already liberated. To distinguish his station, this example was given about him passing by a stream where women are bathing, and he is basically, some of them are bothered by Vyasadeva, and all of them are not bothered by Sukadeva Goswami, simply to distinguish that his 2 feet were not in the material sphere. As a consequence, people who came in his presence could not even feel that he was distinguishing between different species or even distinguishing between genders. So this personality was very attracted to the Lord because rasa was provided in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are also liberated, because liberation is not a great objective. The 4th Purushartha, the greatest objective of a materialist given in the Vedas, is moksha. It is not a lofty objective. It is not a great objective. When you are chanting Harinam, Namabhas gives you moksha. When your Harinam becomes faultless, when you are chanting offenseless Nam, you will be in a position of someone who has gone beyond the material sky. That is when it is possible. So liberation is given when you offenselessly chant the holy names. Beyond that comes relationships with Krishna. Holy names being Krishna himself, rasa would also flow through. So first there is offenses. Offensive chanting has to stop. That is the process of anartha, nivritti. Anarthas are material desires. Having objectives which are not connected to Krishna consciousness after so many instructions are being received, these are anarthas. When we chant sincerely and we get stimulus by being with devotees and we do not get stimulated by objectives of the world, then we have the objective of being able to go across and overcome anarthas. Then our objectives are purely outside of the sphere. We are wanting to develop relationships. So 2 points. Number 1, we want to be stimulated in the company of those who have similar goals. Association, super important. Association does not mean hang out together and watch movies. Sometimes devotees do that. They get together and engage in activity which is distinctly material. It's unfortunate. Then they're saying this association, at least I'm not watching a movie with a karmi. I'm watching a movie with the other devotee friends. Association, sadhu sangha, means being in touch with those who can stimulate us to develop transcendental goals and to center ourselves within those transcendental goals. This is association. Being in the presence being in the company of those who can help us chant better, being in the company of those who can motivate us for Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the first point, stimulation. So the moment Srila Sukadev Goswami came in touch with Srila Vyasadev's rendering of Srimad Bhagavatam, he immediately became extraordinarily motivated, because his qualities were already transcendental. He was above this material creation. The moment he came in touch with rasa, he became extraordinarily motivated. The relationship with Krishna can motivate anyone, even a liberated soul. Liberated souls, and the objective of liberation without relationship with Krishna is not a lofty goal at all. Because for us, that is offered to us in chanting. As soon as we complete Anartha Nivritti, we are almost freed from the touches of material nature. Namabhas, offenseless chanting, can grant us liberation. It's very simple. It's very simple to understand. 80% of our effort at this time is focused on removing our distractions. I would say most of our effort, I don't want to use percentages. 20%, I would say, is basically being contributed to the holy name. When you reach the point of Anartha Nivritti, when those anarthas are gone, where the objectives of this world do not interfere anymore, you have no other objectives other than wanting to chant, then all your chanting goes towards the objective of developing a relationship with Krishna. Then there's rapid acceleration of advancement by the devotee. So there are superb, extraordinarily lofty, exciting milestones that we have to look forward to. These milestones are extraordinary. Please keep in mind that these milestones are extraordinary. There's so much being offered. The stimulus for these milestones comes from coming in touch with Bhagavatam. Srila Vyasadeva wrote Srimad Bhagavatam to stimulate these milestones and to put us in touch with Krishna and to develop a relationship with Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is the personification of Krishna. There is no difference between Bhagavatam and Krishna. No difference between Nama and Krishna. When we come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, it would stimulate us. It would stimulate us to set our goals right. Śrī Nārada Muni was concerned that the goals set by the Vedas are not the goals which a human being should focus on. Srila Vyasadeva was despondent. He was sad that after all this that I have done, I don't feel satisfied, because the objectives of the Vedas and the objectives of what Srila Vyasadeva had done thus far would not stimulate relationships with the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam will establish a sincere chanter of the holy names in connection with the Lord. So this is very, very crucial for us to understand that several things were spoken in today's class. Despondency of Vyasadeva is simply a clue and a very, very big answer, a very important answer to our own despondency. If we are despondent after engaging in activities of devotional service, it means that our goals are not proper. Please examine your goals. If your goals are within material sphere, then there would be certain dissatisfaction. It's a must. That's how it works. The second point, stimulation is required even if you are liberated. Srila Sukadev Goswami was stimulated by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Our stimulus would also come from Srimad Bhagavatam. The extent to which we are stimulating ourselves with material energy, to that extent we would be materially situated. Stimulus is very important. Please be careful about where our senses are being stimulated. That's why association is so critical, and association with those who can stimulate us to proceed towards the goals of the Bhagavatam is very important. Mahaprabhu just kept one literature. He said there's nothing required other than Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything written by our acharyas is derived from Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything. It is all derived from Bhagavatam. It's either realizations, or these are basically realizations and practical experiences which have come from Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything, literally, has its origin in Bhagavatam. So coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam on a periodic daily basis, drawing inspiration from Srimad Bhagavatam, becoming stimulated with the goals of Bhagavatam, becoming stimulated by coming in touch with Krishna through Bhagavatam, through Nam. This is one of the most important aspects of our existence. At the beginning of this class, before the sound interruption, I was talking about the fact that Srila Rupa Goswami has given us Seva Unmukehi Jihva Adav. Jihva has to be engaged. So we eat Krishna Prasadam, we chant Harinam, we are hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is also being recited. There's Kirtan, and then there is Shravanam. So we are hearing, we are speaking, and at the same time we are tasting Krishna Prasadam. Sevon Mukhehi Jihva Adav. Once you do this, you are on your way. It's a very simple, powerful process because it's dependent on Krishna. It is not dependent on us. Krishna takes over. He basically takes over. Once you come in touch with Bhagavatam and the Nam, he takes over. But please examine your inventory of desires. See if you're desiring this. My spiritual master used to make a comment which was quite frightening. He used to say, most devotees don't desire pure devotional service. Look ourselves in the mirror. Are we asking for it on a daily basis? Are we really saying, Krishna, I want to be pure, I want to engage in your service? Most of us don't desire pure devotional service. We don't. It's a sad truth. It's a sad truth. We need to go back again and again to see whether this is happening. Then once we are in touch with people who are desiring pure devotional service, then the stimulus is there. So coming in touch with devotees is very important. Association is very important. Vani is fine. Look at the arrangements that are being made. Today, no one today can complain that they don't have access to association. Even if you're in a remote corner of the world, you have access to association today. No one can complain that they don't have access to books. Almost everybody has access to books, either online, otherwise. In the early stages of our movement, most devotees had not read beyond a few books because Srila Prabhupada was still writing. His presence on the planet was so powerful that they were motivated to serve him. And even though many of these books were not out, people who had read one version of Bhagavatam, in the sense if they had read the Bhagavatam once, they were considered great scholars. Why? Because that was all that was available then. And then people used to be very, very eager to join and hear from them as to what they had read. Today, we have no complaints because we have so much access to material. There are so many classes going on all the time. There's so many books. The point I'm just trying to make is find a way to stimulate yourself by coming in touch with devotional stimulus. This is very important and it has to be done regularly. You constantly have to be reminded of the goals. That's why I tend to talk about Panchanga Bhakti literally in every class. Someone asked me, what about this desire and what about that desire? There are no safe desires. There are no safe desires in this world. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes in the 10th canto, he talks about the fact that even if you desire Krishna as a child, it is only sex desire. There are no safe desires. There are no safe desires. Desire what our Guru Parampara has given us. Our Guru Parampara has sorted out and picked up 5 main activities. Desire Sangha, desire Namasmaran, Nama Kirtan. If you are having the opportunity to participate in regular Kirtan, it is wonderful. Desire Bhagavat Shravanam, coming in touch with Bhagavatam either through reading or through hearing. Desire wanting to come in touch with Krishna's Dham. These are desires that need to be cultivated. Number 4, wanting to engage in deity worship. Number 5, wanting to engage in deity worship. These are the only safe desires. These are the only safe desires. Everything else is a little bit suspect. So we need to predominantly see if our main desires are this. We might have other small desires here and there, which is fine because predominantly we should be desiring this. If predominantly we're desiring something else altogether in life, scope for misery is very high. So I'm going to stop here. This is a summary of the 4th chapter. In the next week, we will do the 5th chapter where Śrī Nārada Muni further continues the conversation with Srila Vyasadeva. Any questions or comments, please?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is Ravindra Babu.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhu, I have a couple of questions. When we hear class, we get inspired and we want to do all this, but the moment we go to office and see the things around, it's more like the people who are big corporates and big names in the world, they are all trying, they have no knowledge about the Vedic, or without that still they are achieving a lot of things, and their goal is to make the world better. Our feelings tell that this world is dukkha.
Ravi, actually, your voice is coming pretty
My
broken
mind
up.
always keeps what is.
Hare Krishna.
I think it's is it clear to no?
It is not clear. Is everybody able to hear clearly?
I'm able to hear you, Prabhu, but yeah, my voice may not be clear to you.
No, is it?
Prabhu's voice were breaking.
Okay. So it is not me. Ravi, can you kindly please ask the question, perhaps in one sentence, so this way I could hear, because it's breaking up a lot.
Oh, okay, Prabhu. In summary, there is a lot of confusion when we see outside world and our teachings. People without having this knowledge, they are making all big things materially, and it appears like that is the truth. That's what important as long as we are living in this world. Then having spiritual goals and all these.
Okay, so
even though we know it's a kind of illusion with this knowledge that you understand, but that predominates. Yes,
yeah.
Any comment on this?
Yeah, please, could you put yourself on mute, Ravi, if you could, please? Yeah, so see, this is the issue. The issue is, it's a matter of faith. Why would I care about the plans of being, of plans of someone who is not in touch with devotional service? When you go to work, and everybody has to work, it's a practical requirement. When we go to work and when we are in the corporate environment, you should go with your objectives of being very clear that your objectives are to engage in devotional service. You're going there to the corporate environment and you will do what is necessary very sincerely. You don't need to ignore your job. You don't need to ignore the objectives given there. You will tolerate the circumstances, which is primarily Krishna's teaching. You tolerate your circumstances. You do what is required there for the job to be met and for people to be satisfied with your output. And then you return back to your devotional service. So the point which I'm trying to make here is, this is an issue. An average devotee comes in touch with pure devotional service and then goes back and then immerses themselves in activity which is completely disconnected on a daily basis. This is an issue. So the more we strengthen our resolve by ensuring that our objectives are very clear before we even go there, that would help us. So what is it that you can do? You can set a goal of saying that this is not satisfying to me. The objectives given in Srimad Bhagavatam is exactly what I want to pursue. Now let me make a plan to see how I can reduce my involvement in the world over a period of time. So that is the true objective with which you can go to work. You can go to work thinking that 10 years from now, I want to unplug. 10 years from now, I want to increase the quantum of service which I'm doing to the movement, rather than my involvement in my capacity at work. So how do I retire? How do I disengage? How do I minimize? If this becomes the objective, then you can set a target of how much money you require in 10 years' time for you to disengage. You can set a practical target, and you can go to work with that practical target in mind, which is related to devotional service. And you tolerate the circumstances, be sincere, and then disengage when the opportunity comes so that you could contribute to devotional service more. There is no other solution to this. There's no other solution. This motivation has to be internal. This is not for everyone. The motivation has to be internal. You have to work on yourself where you feel that this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. Yeah? So what I'm saying is, don't walk away from work. Don't be discouraged from working in the environment. Set an objective so that you could disengage a few years down the line. Use the present to gain some resources so that you could disengage comfortably. This is what you need to do. You need to go to work so that you don't have to worry about money. That's all. This should be your objective. Simple. Don't get stimulated by what is going on there, because that's not your objective. You want to ultimately disengage. You want to contribute fully. Go to work with the objective of wanting to disengage. That will give you a stimulus to bring in what is required so that you could settle in. This is very important for you to do. Yeah, this is very important. That's my suggestion. So this is not a situation where you give up work. It is not, because not everybody is suitable to give up work at this time. It is not practical if you're a family person. So in that sense, what I'm trying to tell you is it's important for you to set goals according to Bhagavatam. And even if you're not motivated by the goals of Bhagavatam, at least understand that everybody else is motivated in terms of great personalities are motivated. So we keep the goals of Bhagavatam at the objective, saying, I'm not motivated yet because I'm not stimulated, I have not moved forward, my heart is not cleared of objectives of this world. But keep the objectives of Bhagavatam in the forefront and start achieving what you need to achieve so that you could disengage. Eventually, disengagement and higher engagement in active service to Prabhupada is going to be required eventually. If you don't plan for it, it will never happen. So going to work today is simply a step in the right direction so that we could bring in what is required so that we could move away from this. Okay?
Yes, yeah, it's clear.
Hare Krishna
Thank you.
Prabhu.
Yes, Haribol.
Haribol, Padmavati Nityamrita. Sorry, I joined late. I'm sorry for that, Prabhu, because I got something hooked up here. Prabhu, I wanted to ask you, you said it's very unfortunate. Most of the devotees won't really desire pure devotional service. Can you please elaborate on that so that we can understand, where we are going wrong? You know,
Well,
can you come that?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
The point which we're trying to make here is there is a need for active inventory taking. There is a distinct misunderstanding about the nature of Krishna consciousness. People think Krishna consciousness is the walk on a road, and several thousand miles down the road there's a tree, and under the tree there's the divine couple are waiting for them. All you have to do is just keep walking. It's a plain lateral field. You're just going to walk on a plain field. There's not going to be any ups, any downs. There are not going to be any challenges. You're just going to keep walking, and sometime in the future, you'll meet the divine couple because they're waiting under a tree for you. Unfortunately, Krishna consciousness is not walking on a plain field. It is climbing a mountain. Krishna consciousness is climbing a mountain. We have to actively put efforts to climb and scale the mountain. There will be a time when we reach a ledge.
Yeah.
We will rest on the ledge and say that I've reached this particular point in the mountain. And at that point in time, we need to take inventory and reset our objectives and again start scaling. So in the previous year, if your effort, for example, just to put a number, for example, if your effort was a number 5 in a scale of 10 in the previous year, will number 5 this year help in moving forward? The answer is no.
No.
You need to move to a 6.
6.
You need to move to a 7. So you need to calibrate and understand that 5 got me this far. 5 can't really take me further. And that's the reason why I feel stagnated. That's the reason why I feel as if I'm going nowhere, even though 10 years have passed and 15 years have passed. And Mataji, I'm not referring to you, and I'm making a very general statement.
No, Prabhu. Oh my Lord, no. I will never think like that, Prabhu. I'm really taking.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that sometimes it may come across as personal. It's not. Yeah.
Oh my God, no. I will never think like. I'm still 1 year old. Not even 1 year, Prabhu. Being honest.
So no, don't worry. So I'm just saying, basically, that sometimes people think like this. 15 years have passed, 10 years have passed, they're still walking.
Yeah.
They haven't really reached any level. They haven't really experienced the profundity of Krishna consciousness. That's because the effort which has been put in, which was started out at 1 or 2, is still remaining at 1 or 2 in a scale of 10. People don't realize that this is climbing a mountain. You need to scale up. It becomes steep. You need to put in more efforts than you did the previous year.
Yeah.
And Krishna gives us stimulus by giving us gifts all along. The different stages of devotional service are different gifts that are left on when you're climbing the mountain. We experience it if the efforts have been put in. That gives us stimulus saying, okay, this is what Shastra says. I have experienced this. Now I'm going to put in extra effort so that I can experience the next level. So we put in our effort, we leave the results to Krishna, and we keep scaling up. Krishna consciousness requires intensity. Prabhupada used to say this, an easy life and Krishna consciousness go ill together. So it doesn't work that way. That's the reason why sometimes when we keep doing what we did the year after year after year and nothing happens, we just get caught up with life to such an extent that we set objectives based on whatever we see around us. It's a constant requirement in Krishna consciousness to go back to the basics and remind ourselves to take inventory, to look at our hearts and say, I've woken up today. Is my objective to give 100% to Krishna? Is this my objective? Do I have 100 other things which I have in mind which are practically unrelated? Am I dissatisfied by something which is happening, which is basically disconnected in certain ways? We have to take inventory of ourselves. We have to understand that this is a process. We need to calibrate ourselves. We need to take steps year by year. And we need to see if the improvement that we did in the previous year in some of our activities is showing up as results. If not, what is it that we can do to improve? We need to do our part, and it has to increase year by year. So if it doesn't happen, then what happens is basically we get caught up with life. So what I'm trying to say is it's very easy to see if our interest is in pure devotional service. Are we really, really, really wanting pure devotional service where we are constantly wondering how to make improvements and adjustments? Are we taking inventory? Are we sitting down and seeing what we did the previous year and how we could improve this year? This is what I meant.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Prabhu. When you said about the gifts, suddenly it came to my mind like a crystal maze. Different places have different, when you do crystal maze, sometimes nice gifts you find, for the kids and even for the grown-ups. I thought of that straight away. I don't know why. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Any other question or comment, please?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This is Krishna Vani.
Prabhu,
as you were explaining Panchanga Bhakti, can you please, put it in order? Like first is association and then chanting. So would you please go through again?
Yes, please. The first is association, sadhu sangha.
Yeah.
The second is nama smaran, nama kirtan, which is chanting and remembering. The third is Bhagavat Shravan, which is hearing, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
The fourth is engaging in the worship of the deities.
Yeah.
And the fifth is developing a desire to stay in the Dham.
As a visiting holy Dham or developing to reside.
Yeah, see, there's a beautiful verse. I forget whether it is in the Kundashtakam prayers of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami or Raghunath Das Goswami, because both of them have written glories of Śrī Nārada Kund.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the exact. I would say the body of the prayers, but
Okay.
there is a Phala Shruti. There is a particular 4 lines which have been written by the author, one of the great personalities in the movement, saying, if there is no other desire in the heart other than wanting to stay in Vrindavan and engage in devotional service, then one will witness the pastimes of the divine couple in the wonderful area of Govardhan and Radhakund. So the point is, this is a litmus test. It is not desiring to be in Vrindavan. The ultimate objective is no other desire should be present. If there is no other desire, because this is basically the standard of souls who are in Goloka. Which resident of Vrindavan eternally would want to leave Vrindavan? This is a standard. So when no other desires are present in the heart other than wanting to engage in pure devotional service in Vraj, then the pastimes of the divine couple would become manifest before our eyes, because these are constantly happening. So that's the point I want. So you can be in Birmingham, you could be in London,
Mm-hmm.
which is perfectly fine. But if your heart has no other desires other than wanting to be in Vrindavan, then you are in Vrindavan in one sense. So I'm not saying everybody should move to Vrindavan and stop preaching in the West.
Right.
But this quality of desire, of not having any other desire but wanting to stay in Vrindavan, is what is being given by Acharyas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Beautifully explained. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, when you were saying that, sorry, Prabhu, one more question, is that okay?
That's all right. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Who's that? God, there was, I can't really remember who's this Prabhu. He is a disciple of Gaura, my God, Gaur Govinda Maharaj. He did mention, if your spiritual master says only you go and live in the Holy Dham, otherwise there is no meaning you go and just live in the Holy Dham. It is just equal to living in somewhere else. So do you want to comment on, because it is your spiritual master says, that means he knows you. That's why he is instructing you. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, so the point is, there are 2 points. Number one, when we talk about Panchanga Bhakti and wanting to desire to live in Vrindavan, we're talking about cultivating such a desire, not essentially moving to Vrindavan, but having a quality of consciousness where there's no other desire other than wanting to stay in Vrindavan and engage in Vraja Bhakti.
Okay.
Srila Prabhupada, when he left Vrindavan and went to preach around the world, this was in his heart. All he wanted to do was stay in Vraj and chant and engage in Vraja Bhakti. But he preached around the world carrying this desire, and that allowed devotees to come in touch with that desire because it was in Prabhupada's heart. So in a similar fashion, it's a matter of consciousness where one develops consciousness enough that they have no other desire but to stay in Vrindavan and practice Vraja Bhakti. They have the ability to infect others with such desires when they preach and when they speak to them. So if someone doesn't have that motivation, doesn't have the quality of just having that desire, simply moving your location to Vrindavan but remembering everything else is not going to help. That is the context in which that was made.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Because usually when you walk on the streets in Vrindavan, you will find people engaging in all kinds of activities. You will have people smoking. A couple of days back, I was on the way to Radhakund, and then this is Raj Mandal, And I was on the way to Radhakund, and there is there's a wine shop. They're selling liquor. There's a wine shop, and this is within Rajamandal, so people go to that wine shop, obviously. Otherwise, why would they keep the business open? So the point I'm trying to make is all kinds of activities happen in Rajamandal. So staying in Rajamandal without cleansing our heart and having only the desire to stay in Rajamandal to serve is useless, because the heart is already desiring other things. That is the context in which that was made.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prabhu. It is very clear. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. It's Pratyush here. Dhanvat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare
Can you
Krishna.
hear me?
Yes, I can. Hare Krishna, Pratyush.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhuji, somehow it's said that Mayapur is also non-different from Vrindavan. And being Adharya Dham, I mean, for a fallen soul, it's much more, easy to approach Mayapur. So having a mindset or a desire to live in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Mayapur, is it at the equal level?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no difference. There is no difference between Navadvip Mandal and Rajamandal. There is no difference. And surely Mahaprabhu is most munificent and most merciful. So absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. That was a question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other question or comment? Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, we'll meet again next week. And did someone want to say something?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's Krishna Vani. Prabhuji,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get something clearance about that, we just had some discussion in our meeting that, mostly, the people from India, when they do the obeisances, they always use the word Dandavat. And we had some discussion that, Dandavat means, mostly the man does the Dandavat Pranam, but ladies don't do that. They do the Panchanga Pranam. So is it okay to use a Dandavat word, or we should use Pranam or something? Just wanted to clarify.
See, contextually, we know what it means. We know what it means.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying, you're doing Panchanga, which is perfectly fine because that is culturally acceptable. That is what is required. And so I don't believe that there is a lack overall. And so we don't need to distinguish. This reminds me, one day I was, I don't know if I ever shared this, I was paying obeisances in our Samadhi, Prabhupada's Samadhi. And someone corrected me, one of my, someone whom I respect, corrected me saying, you shouldn't be paying obeisances to Prabhupada, from the left, because normally Matajis are on the right and then Prabhu's on the left. So we always move to the left and we pay obeisances. So Prabhupada comes to our left. He said, no, you shouldn't be doing it. When you see the spiritual master, you should be paying obeisances straight down. In a sense, face Prabhupada and then pay obeisances. I said, okay, I didn't know this, and there was a scriptural reference. So there was some scriptural reference which was given, so which is perfectly fine. I remembered this. Then I said, okay, I will do this from now on, because this is probably the best way to do it when I'm paying obeisances. Then the same evening, I went to Srila Jiva Goswami's Samadhi. I go to Radha Damodar Mandir. I was paying obeisances straight down to Srila Jiva Goswami. And a Vaishnava there started shouting at me saying, why are you doing this? You're not supposed to do this. You are supposed to pay obeisances on the side because he's a Vaishnava. He's not your guru. Okay? Only guru pay obeisances from the side. So I stopped him and I corrected him. And then I reflected on it and I said, what a big waste of time. What a big waste of time this is, that someone tells me that I should pay obeisances this way. The other person is telling me I should pay obeisances on this way. Why can't I just be left alone so that I could sit in the corner and chant my Harinam? So I was just reflecting on this, thinking, Prabhupada saved us from all these little details. He saved us. Yeah. Do we in our temples anywhere notice how people pay obeisances? We don't, right? Generally, we don't. Generally, we don't. We just pay obeisances and we walk away. Some of us don't even notice what is going on when people, we just appreciate the fact that people are paying respect. So what I'm just trying to tell you, not as a criticism for your question, Mataji, don't get me wrong.
No, no.
What I wanted to say was sometimes these details don't matter.
Okay.
And it is better to simply accept it and say that whatever helps is fine. So you could pay obeisances with Panchanga, Prabhupada will accept it, Krishna will accept it, someone else pays full dandavats, they will accept it. Both are considered, extraordinarily good because both are submission to the Guru and submission to Krishna. So I was just wanting to say as a little detail that technically there are differences, but ultimately sometimes it can become very overwhelming when we start focusing on these differences.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Thanks for clearing.
Sure. Any other question or comment? Okay, we'll end here if there aren't any. If there are questions, you could post to the WhatsApp group so we could share. In the next subsequent week, we will do chapter 5. The whole topic of chapter 4 was for us to focus on the fact that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Vyasadeva, could also become despondent. He could become sad because he's in touch with material energy. So this was a lesson for us. And being given the gift of Bhagavatam for us to move on is also the other part to it. So thank you for joining me. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.